Today's class will discuss about exception handling. What is exception handling? What is exceptions?
Exceptions are the objects created by JVM that represent corresponding logical errors.
Excellent. Who is this? Who is this? Pavana, right? There are two types of errors available. What is logical error? What is syntax errors? What is errors first of all? We'll see. Okay. Syntax, we'll talk about syntax errors. Very important concept, exceptions. Syntax errors occurs whenever a statement written by the programmer cannot be compiled by the compiler. Cannot be compiled by the programmer. Cannot be compiled by the compiler. Sorry for that, not programmer. Syntax errors occur whenever a statement written by the programmer cannot be compiled by the compiler. Whenever a source code is compiled, first compiler checks whether a proper environment is available for the JVM or not. If proper environment is not available, then it will try to create a proper environment for the JVM. Then compiler will try to create a proper environment for the JVM. Thus, it is not able to create the proper environment, then it will show as a compilation error for us. Now, what is syntax errors now?
Programmer errors, whatever the statement written by the program, if there are errors in that statement, they are called syntax errors.
And also we can call it as a
Compile errors.
Compilation errors. Yeah, go ahead.
So like missing curly braces or missing a semicolon in a statement, or missing something that is equals to, or if there is any wrong in method creation.
Yes. Why compilation errors will come? How compilation error will throw JVM? Compiler will throw or JVM will create, or compiler will create?
Pardon?
Compiler will create or JVM will create?
Compiler will create them.
Excellent. This is called compilation errors. Logical errors. Sometimes JVM would be unable to execute statements in the bytecode for some reasons. for some reasons. This results logical errors.
So logical errors are runtime errors?
Yeah. Whenever a logical error occurs, program is terminated and control comes out of the program unconditionally. We'll try to see it in an example. Create a project called acceptance. Project inside this exception project, I created my class called as com.ch.customer. Inside the customer, if you create, let's take the example, int I equal to 100, int j equal to 0, int x equal to I by j. I want to display the output of x. This program is perfectly compiled, right? No, without errors. Rohit?
Yes.
Pavani?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please mute your.
No, it has a runtime error. Divide by 0.
But my question is, it is compiled, right, successfully?
Yeah, it is usually compiled.
Yeah.
It will compile.
If I run the application, I'll get some error. Exception in thread main divided by 0. While running the application, somewhere it found some not able to, JVM is not able to execute some lines. This line number is 8, that scenarios. So I is 100 and 0 is j. 100 by 0 it is not able to execute this line, then it is terminated the program. That scenario I got some error. This error is called as logical errors, also called as runtime errors. The above program, please take the program, compiled successfully. The above program compiled successfully. While executing it, value of x becomes infinity. Since x is of type integer, since x is of type integer, JVM would not understand how to store infinity value in integer into the 32-bit location. Thus, JB will understand how to store infinite values into the integer 32-bit location. Thus, JVM terminates the program. Okay. There are, next point, some predefined classes are available in Java. There are some predefined classes available in Java .lang.package. Package whose objects are created by JVM whose objects are created by JVM whenever it encounters a logical error. Whenever it finds a logical error in the bracket, names of such classes are found under the exception classes in API. For each and every logical error, there is a corresponding exception class in the java.lang package. This is the exception packages. For each and every logical error, there is a corresponding classes in the java.lang package. Arithmetic exception, class cast exception, array store exception, array index out of bound exception, flow not supported exception. There are many other like this. Whenever JVM encounters a logical error, it creates an object of the corresponding exception class. Since the object is not explicitly handled, this object reaches back to the JVM. JVM accepts these objects and terminates the program. Now, we are able to handle these exception class objects. We can prevent the program from getting terminated. Concept of handling the exception class objects. Avoiding them from reaching back to the JVM is known as exception handling. Concept of handling the exception class object and avoiding them from reaching back to the JVM is known as exception handling. If anyone asks exception handling, you should write a program like this. Int I equal to 100, int j equal to 0, int x equal to I by j, and try to print the value of x value. And you should explain how much concept I explain, that much you should explain. Can anyone read from the top to bottom as of now? So far recovered. Pavani?
Yeah.
Pavani?
Yeah. Yes, Chaitanya.
Can you read?
From where?
From where means the class example after that.
Okay. The above examples compiled successfully but has runtime divide by 0 while executing. The value of x becomes infinity. Since x is of type integer, JVM would not understand how to store infinity in an integer 32-bit location. Thus, JVM terminates the program. There are some predefined classes available in java.lang.package whose objects are created by JVM whenever it encounters a logical error. Names of such classes are found under exception classes in API. For each and every logical error, there is a corresponding exception class in java.lang.package. Whenever JVM encounters a logical error, it creates the object of corresponding exception classes. Since object is not explicitly handled, this object reaches back to JVM. JVM accepts this object and terminates the program. By extending these exception classes, we can actually stop terminating the program. Concept of handling exception class object and avoiding them from reaching to JVM is called exception handling.
Excellent. Same answer if you explain that. It's very good for the interview. Interview will feel very happy. They'll give one smile, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. So now everybody understand what is exception classes, right? What is exception?
Yes.
What is exception handling?
Yes.
Now we'll see how to handle the procedure to handle the exceptions. Okay. In Java, we have two keywords called as try, catch.
Chaitanya, I have a question.
Try and catch. We have two keywords, try and catch, to implement exception handling. The try keyword, please write down. The try keyword recognize the exception class object created by the JVM and it gets hold of those objects and transfer them to the catch block. The try keyword recognizes the exception class objects created by JVM and it gets hold of these objects and transfer them to the catch block. In the catch block, we should be able to assign those objects to the appropriate references so that in the catch block we should be able to assign those objects to the appropriate references so that they will not reach JVM and therefore program would not be terminated. So the typical functions we used to call, we used to write like this. Function 1.
Method.
What can I call as a method? Method 1. I have a try catch block here. Some lines of code. And I'm going to handle the exception. If I got any exceptions in the try block, I'm going to handle exceptions by using catch block. Exception E1. Method. And we can print the exception also. Please take this line. Please take this piece of code. As soon as an exception is raised, the user would easily know in which part of the program the logical error has occurred. System.out.println of System.out of E1 print some messages instead of printing address contained in the E1. This is because of exception is a class it overrides the toString method of the object class. In this way, we can use try-catch blocks in any of the programming language, any of the program, anywhere in the program. Now in exception classes, we have different implementations are available here. So as we told about here, we will try to implement a type block here. Now we'll try to see what is the error. Previously error was like this, right? This is toString, not typestring. This is the error, right? Now we'll see if you run the application, if we handle exceptions by using try-catch block, it won't reach JVM and display the error. It will reach exception only. It will reach by compiler itself. What is the error?
java.lang.arithmetic exception divide by 0.
Yeah. So any difference between these two errors? Any difference between these two errors?
No.
Two errors? No difference?
No. In first scenario, the program was terminated. In this scenario, it actually went to the catch block and printed what was the error.
First scenario, JVM terminated the program and it is executed and it will display the output like this, errors like this. And whereas second scenario, we handle the exceptions. Try block is handle the exceptions, and if you found the exception here, then it is sent to catch block, and catch block is handled exception. Okay?
Yeah.
Is it fine, right?
Yeah.
There are n number of classes are available for arithmetic classes, exceptions. If you see here, arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception, array store exception, class not found exception, and exception. If you see exception class, these are the different methods available in exception class. Exception is constructor, default constructor, one more constructor with a string argument, and one more constructor with a string argument and throwable class. And there are many constructors available here. So there is no methods at all, only constructors. There are methods are there like add surprised, fill in stack trace, get class, get localized message, get messages. There are many of them. Now we can display like this also. Exception dot get message. Only it will display this exception only. You comment this line, right? Only it display this line only. Clear, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Object class is the superclass for, please write down the diagram. All the classes in Java, there is a class called as throwable. There is a class called as throwable. Inside this class, we have two types of classes are available. One is called as exception class. One is called as error class. Okay. Exception class is the, please write down, please take the diagram, please write down. Exception class is the superclass of all exception classes, and error class is the superclass for all error classes. Throwable class is the superclass for exception class and error class. And object class is the superclass for throwable class, hence, and also object class is the superclass for all the classes in Java. Sometimes in a program, applying the concept of exception handling to some statements is not compulsory. At the compilation time, for each and every statement, is to generate an exception. Sometimes in a program, applying the concept of exception handling to some statement is not compulsory. At compilation time, for each and every statement, is to generate an exception. Compiler will check whether we are handling the corresponding exception class object or not. Compiler will check whether we are handling the corresponding exception class object or not. In the process, next one, in the process of checking, compiler will not bother much, even though if we don't handle objects of some exception classes. The process of checking, compiler will not bother much, even though we don't handle objects of some exception classes. But there are some statements which applying concept of exception handling is mandatory at compilation time itself. But there are some statements applying the concept of exception handling is mandatory at the compilation time itself. If we do not handle them, compiler will generate a compilation error. Next one, the exception object for which compiler compiles to handle them are known as checked exceptions. The exception object for which compiler compiles to handle them are known as checked exceptions. The exception object for which compiler does not compile to handle them are known as unchecked exceptions. What is checked exception? What is unchecked exceptions, Bhavani?
The exception object for which compiler compiles to handle them are known as checked exceptions. The exception object for which compiler does not compile to handle them are known as unchecked exceptions.
Very important interview question and very important interview answer also. Please, very important interview question. Class not found exception. Please, sorry.
So, how can we figure out which are checked and unchecked exceptions?
Yeah, we'll try. We'll see. Class not found exception, IO exceptions, are examples of checked exceptions. Arithmetic exception, here I'm showing here, right? Arithmetic exception can someone mute? Array index out of bound exception are example of unchecked exceptions. Question: how can we find out? Question: how can you find out which exception comes under which category? That is checked or unchecked. How can you find out? What is my question, Suguna? Suguna, are you there?
Yes.
What is my question?
How can you find out which exception comes to
Which category?
which category? Yeah.
In the category of exceptions, there is one class by name runtime exception. Runtime exception. It is a subclass of exception class. It is a subclass of exception class. It is a subclass of exception class. Any class which is a subclass of runtime exception class, any class which is a subclass of runtime exception class is called as unchecked exceptions. Any class which is a subclass of runtime exception class is called as unchecked exceptions. Next point. Any class which is not a subclass of runtime exception class is called as checked exceptions. Now this answers your question, Pavani.
Yeah.
Pavani, are you there?
Yes, Chaitanya.
This answers your question.
Yes, yes.
Now, yet how you will decide which exception is pointing to runtime, which exception is called compile time? Can you tell me?
Runtime exceptions are logical exceptions, and compile time exceptions are this syntax errors or compilation errors.
You're not in note, writing notes, I guess.
No, I'm writing.
What is checked exception example?
Class not found IO exception.
Yeah. Which is checked exceptions. Arithmetic exception means? You can
Unchecked
see
exception.
class not found exception. Class not found exception, right? It is what is the class not found exception? It is not extending any class, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Public class, class not found exception extends reflect operational exception. So there is no runtime exception here, right? Then it is called as a compile time exception or checked exceptions, right?
Okay.
And we will see arithmetic exception class. Arithmetic exception class extends.
Runtime exception.
This is called as. It's called as.
Checked exception.
It's called as checked exception. Please don't get confused.
Yeah.
Very, very important
Yeah.
concept. And also exceptions are there and errors are there. Okay, as per the diagram. Exception, error. Errors are abstract method error, asset error. Okay. Error is a class. Okay. Out of memory error, stack overflow error. This is an example for error. Whereas exceptions are two types, checked and unchecked. Checked means it won't extend runtime exception. Unchecked means it will extend runtime exception. Then what is the example of checked and unchecked? Examples
Unchecked
of checked.
exception. Unchecked exception. Arithmetic exception. Class not found.
Array index out of bound exception. Or unchecked exception. Class not found exception, IO exception are examples of checked exceptions.
Excellent. So tomorrow's class will cover about the remaining concept related to exception classes. Okay.